we had an 11-3 good team against the Indiana Fever, Angel Reese, against Caitlin Clark, and that was about as dead a crowd as you could possibly have.
Stop what you are doing, because what just happened inside the Indiana Fever organization is unlike anything we have seen in the modern era of the WNBA. Not a trade demand, not a quiet trade request slipped through an agent. Not a player sulking through practices while the team pretends everything is fine. 4 players walked out of practice and told the organization directly, "We are not coming back and we will not play until Stephanie White is removed as head coach." Let that sentence sit with you for a moment. This is not a rumor. This is not a hot take from a radio host trying to stir up controversy. This is a reported, sourced, verified account of what is happening inside one of the most watched franchises in professional basketball right now. 3 minutes. The game was 3 minutes old, and the head coach of the Indiana Fever yanked her franchise player, the most talked about, most watched, most consequential player in the league right now, off the floor before the game even had a chance to breathe. And the players had enough. That is what voices connected to the Indiana Fever organization have reportedly been saying about Caitlin Clark, behind closed doors, to media, and the players heard it, and now they have responded. Here is nobody is fully connecting yet. This walkout did not happen overnight. This has been building for months through early benchings, through sideline blow-ups, through locker room whispers that turned into locker room screams. Today we connect every single dot. Stay with me, because this goes much deeper than one walkout. To understand why 4 players just blew up the Indiana Fever from the inside, you have to understand the sequence of events that got us to this moment. Because nothing about this is random. Every step of this collapse was telegraphed, ignored, and allowed to fester until it became impossible to contain. From the first weeks of the 2026 season, the tension between Stephanie White's coaching philosophy and this roster was visible to anyone paying attention. White runs a system-first operation. She believes in predetermined rotations, rigid defensive schemes, and the idea that no player, regardless of talent level, is bigger than the structure she has built. That philosophy has some merit in theory. Discipline, accountability, organizational structure, these are real values in professional sports. But they become a liability the moment your best player is Caitlin Clark. Because Caitlin Clark is not a system player. She is a game reader, a momentum creator, a player whose value comes from being unleashed, trusted, and given the freedom to make decisions in real time. The moment you cage that instinct inside a rigid rotation chart, you are not just limiting her, you are undermining the entire offensive identity of the team. And White knew this, or should have known it, and she chose the system anyway. Game after game, the same thing happened. Clark would come out hot, the offense would start clicking, momentum would build, and then, right around the 3 to 7 minute mark, before the quarter even found its rhythm, White would call her to the bench. That pattern repeated itself so many times this season that fans, analysts, and most critically Clark's teammates began to notice. This was not game management, this was not strategic rest, this was a coach asserting control over a player whose star power had already eclipsed. Everyone in the organization, players saw it, they talked about it, and eventually they stopped being silent about it. The tipping point came when the sideline tension stopped being something you could only sense and became something you could actually see on camera. Multiple games featured visible moments of friction between White and Clark on the bench, body language that told a story of 2 people operating in conflict, not in partnership. In one game, White was caught on camera slamming her clipboard in frustration, and the cameras told the story of where that frustration was directed. In another, post-game press conference footage showed Clark choosing her words with the careful precision of someone who is very deliberately not saying what she actually thinks. And the players, they were watching all of it. Let us get into the details of the walkout, because the specifics matter enormously here. According to reports, the incident occurred during a scheduled team practice. The session had already started when tension between multiple players and the coaching staff reached a breaking point. 4 players, we will get to the question of who in a moment made a collective decision to remove themselves from the practice floor. This was not a spontaneous emotional reaction. The accounts suggest this was a coordinated action. These 4 players did not storm off separately in frustration. They left together as a unit with a unified message: Stephanie White needs to go. A coordinated walkout by 4 professional athletes is one of the most extreme forms of collective action available to players short of a formal union grievance or an outright refusal to play in games. This is the nuclear option inside a locker room. And these 4 players chose it deliberately. The message was delivered clearly to team management. Until Stephanie White is removed from her position as head coach, these players will not participate in team activities. Think about what it takes for 4 players on a professional sports team to coordinate a walkout. You need shared grievance, meaning the problem is not just one person's perception, but a widely held truth inside the locker room. You need trust, meaning these players believe each other enough to take a massive career risk together. And you need courage because walking out of a professional team practice is the kind of decision that can define and damage a career. 4 players doing this in unison tells you that the locker room dissatisfaction runs much deeper than 4. Those 4 are the visible tip of an iceberg. The question is how many more players are sitting on that practice floor feeling the same way but not yet willing to take the public risk. In most team environments, the players who take the bold action speak for many more who are silently aligned with them. Reports suggest the Indiana Fever front office was immediately notified. Team management was reportedly scrambling to assess the situation, speak with both the players involved and the coaching staff, and determine a path forward. As of the most recent reporting, no public statement has been made and no decision on White's status has been announced. The silence from the organization is itself a statement. When your locker room explodes this publicly, silence means you do not have a clean answer. It means you are trying to decide between bad options and worse ones. Here is the part of this story that should make every Indiana Fever fan genuinely furious. Because it was not just the coaching decisions that pushed players to this point. It was the narrative, the deliberately crafted, back-channel character assassination of Caitlin Clark that turned frustration into revolt. Those words, diva, menace, did not emerge from nowhere. They were placed, amplified by media voices who have clear connections to people inside the Indiana Fever organization. And the message they were designed to send was simple. The problem is not the coach. The problem is the player. This is a classic deflection playbook. When organizational dysfunction threatens to become public, you get ahead of the story by making the most visible person in the organization, the one least able to control the narrative, look like the source of the problem. We are better without her. Let that sentence from inside the Indiana Fever organization actually land. The franchise that built its entire marketing strategy, arena upgrade program, television deal, and fan growth around Caitlin Clark, someone inside that building is allegedly saying they are better without her. Either this person does not understand basic basketball economics, or they are so personally invested in the war against Clark that they have lost the ability to reason clearly. Neither option is acceptable in a professional front office. And here is what the 4 players who walked out understood that the front office apparently did not. When you attack the best player on your team through back channels and media allies, the locker room notices. The players hear it. They know who said it, how it got out, and what it means about the culture of the organization they are working inside. The walkout was not just about early benchings and bad rotations. It was about a toxic organizational culture that was willing to publicly undermine its own franchise player. And the players decided they were not going to be part of that culture anymore. Before we talk about what the organization needs to do, we need to pause and acknowledge something that is in danger of getting lost in all of this chaos. Caitlin Clark has endured more in her professional career in less than 2 full seasons than most players face in an entire decade. She entered the WNBA as the most hyped, most scrutinized, most targeted rookie in the history of the league. Every game featured opposing players physically testing her in ways that raised legitimate questions about officiating standards. She was undercut, shoved, elbowed, and targeted, and the officials were inconsistent in their protection. She handled it. She dealt with a media environment that simultaneously demanded she be perfect and looked for any imperfection to amplify. Her every body language moment was dissected. Her frustration on the court, completely normal, completely human responses to competitive pressure, was treated as evidence of a character flaw. She handled it. She watched her team struggle with roster decisions, lose games they should have won, and fail to build the surrounding cast she needed to compete at the highest level. And she kept showing up, kept competing, kept trying to drag this franchise forward. She handled it. And now this. A coaching staff that has allegedly labeled her a diva. A head coach pulling her off the floor 3 minutes into games. A front office that is reportedly briefing media voices with character attacks on their own franchise player. And the locker room imploding around her. And Caitlin Clark is still handling it. She is not blowing up press conferences. She is not demanding trades. She is going to the mic after games and choosing her words carefully, saying what she means without burning bridges. The composure she has shown through all of this is genuinely remarkable. But composure is not infinite. And the question the Indiana Fever organization needs to answer is, how much longer do you expect her to absorb this before she stops handling it? Let us stop being vague about the coaching decisions and get specific. Because the case against Stephanie White is not just about vibes and tension. It is about concrete, repeated, documented tactical failures that have cost this team wins all season. White operates from a predetermined substitution schedule that does not adjust to game flow. In professional basketball at this level, the ability to read momentum, to know when a lineup is working and leave it alone, to know when things are breaking down and make a change is one of the most valuable skills a coach can have. White does not do this. She runs a script. And the script says Clark comes out early in the first quarter, regardless of what the score is, regardless of what the momentum is, regardless of whether the offense is cooking. The script runs. This is not coaching. This is following a spreadsheet. White's preferred defense, a switch-everything scheme, is a legitimate approach in the right system with the right personnel. The problem is that this roster was not built for it and is not suited for it. When you ask Aaliyah Boston to chase perimeter players around ball screens on the outside, you are destroying her effectiveness. Boston is a physical, post-oriented defender whose value comes from protecting the paint and using her size and strength. The moment you put her in space guarding a quick guard, you have wasted her skill set and created a matchup nightmare on your own team. The same problem plays out in reverse when smaller guards get targeted in the post against physical wings and forwards. The defensive scheme is creating more problems than it is solving, and the head coach refuses to adjust. The technical foul incident from earlier this season remains one of the most damning single moments of White's tenure. The head coach did not know her franchise player had picked up a technical foul while it was happening in front of her in a game she was actively coaching. This is not a small lapse. A technical foul is called with the game stopped. The official announces it. It is a dead ball situation, and somehow in that environment with a full bench of assistant coaches and supports, the information did not reach the head coach. That is a systemic communication failure. It means the sideline is not functioning as a coordinated unit. And if basic game information is not flowing to the top of the coaching staff, what other critical information is being lost in real time? Coaching in professional sports requires emotional regulation. You will face bad calls. You will face blown leads. You will face situations that make you want to scream. The great coaches absorb those emotions, process them internally, and project steadiness to their players. The clipboard incidents, the visible sideline meltdowns, the heated on-bench confrontations, these are not one-off moments of human frustration. These are a pattern. And the pattern signals that White is not emotionally equipped to manage the pressure of coaching this franchise at this moment. When the head coach loses composure, the players lose their anchor. And an anchorless locker room is exactly what we are seeing right now. The walkout is a symptom. The disease is a locker room culture that has been allowed to deteriorate over an extended period of time without the front office making any meaningful intervention. Healthy locker room cultures are built on a few foundational elements: trust in leadership, shared belief in the team's direction, and a sense that the organization treats its players with fairness and respect. When those elements erode, you do not get a sudden explosion. Here is the uncomfortable question that the media has mostly been avoiding. How much of this is on the Indiana Fever front office? Because Stephanie White did not create this toxic environment alone. She reports to a front office. And that front office has had months of visible evidence that the relationship between the coaching staff and the players, and specifically between the coaching staff and Caitlin Clark, was deteriorating in ways that threatened the franchise. The early benchings were documented on national television. The sideline tensions were photographed and written about. The post-game press conferences where Clark carefully navigated around the coaching question were analyzed by everyone who was paying attention. And the front office did nothing. Worse than nothing. If the reports about back-channel media narratives are accurate, the front office was actively participating in the problem, allowing or facilitating, or at minimum not shutting down, a campaign to paint Caitlin Clark as the difficult personality in an environment that the front office themselves had allowed to become dysfunctional. That is not a coaching problem. That is an organizational integrity problem. And it raises real questions about whether firing Stephanie White alone is sufficient, or whether the changes that need to happen go higher up the chain. The Fever ownership and senior management need to look at themselves honestly in this moment. What did they know? When did they know it? What did they do or fail to do in response? And what does that tell us about whether this front office is capable of building the kind of championship caliber organization that Caitlin Clark deserves to play inside of? We have laid out the problem in full. Now let's talk about solutions. Because this is not a situation where the Fever can simply wait and see what happens. Every day of inaction is a day of deeper damage to the organization's relationship with its players, its fan base, and most critically, Caitlin Clark herself. The front office cannot let this situation drag on without a public response. Every day that passes with 4 players refusing to participate and no organizational statement is a day where the perception hardens that the Fever management is either incompetent or indifferent. Neither perception is acceptable. If White is going to be fired, and based on the evidence we have laid out today, the case for her removal is overwhelming. Do it now. Do it cleanly. Do not drag it out in a way that allows the locker room wound to deepen. They need to feel that the organization takes seriously what they experienced. And they need to see tangible change, not promises of change, but actual change before trust can begin to be rebuilt. The front office needs to make a public, unambiguous statement of support for Caitlin Clark, not a boilerplate PR statement. A real, substantive declaration that the organization values her, that the diva narrative was wrong and harmful, and that the Indiana Fever are committed to building around her excellence for the long term. This matters because Clark is watching all of this. And while she has been remarkably composed in public, she is a professional athlete at the peak of her career. She has options. She has leverage. And if she begins to believe that the Indiana Fever organization is not a place where she is valued and supported, the consequences for this franchise will be severe and lasting. Let us bring it all the way home. 4 Indiana Fever players walked out of practice and told the organization they will not return until Stephanie White is fired. That happened. It is real, and it is the direct result of months of rigid rotations, tactical failures, sideline meltdowns, and a back-channel campaign against the most important player in the franchise's history. Caitlin Clark has endured physical targeting, media scrutiny, coaching dysfunction, and now a character assassination from voices connected to her own organization. And through all of it, she has shown up, competed, and conducted herself with a professionalism that puts everyone criticizing her to shame. The Indiana Fever are at a crossroads, not a figurative one. A literal right now, decisions being made crossroads. They can choose accountability, fire the coach, acknowledge the failures, rebuild with intention around the generational talent they are lucky enough to have on their roster. Or they can double down on the dysfunction, lose those 4 players' trust permanently, and risk losing Clark herself down the line. The players have spoken. The locker room has spoken. The evidence has spoken. The only voice we are still waiting to hear from is the one that actually has the power to fix this. Drop a comment below. Do you think the Fever fire Stephanie White this week? And who should replace her? Hit the subscribe button if you want to be here when this story breaks wide open, because it is just getting started.